Happy Monday, Mike.
How you doing, Coach?
I'm a little bit of everything today.
Really? Are you
Yeah.
plugged in over there?
I am. I was running short on juice, so now that we're connected, I will abracadabra. All fixed.
That's just amazing.
Isn't it, though?
Maybe that's something to do with the grounding in your new home outlets.
It could be. I'm also using, because I'm in the office, I'm using one of these like humongous power surge protector like strips too, so I think that probably has something to do with it, honestly.
Yeah, and I see we've got a new Skype update available.
Yeah, of course we do.
Jesus.
That may be one every single time we do a podcast from here on out.
Honest to God, with the updates.
Yeah, come on now.
This is just people just typing and sending out stuff.
That's it.
They just got to send out something.
Just to do it.
Yep. So, I just got back from yoga. I'm in.
I heard all in.
I'm all in.
I like it, man. I like it.
And it kicked my ass.
Yoga tends to do that.
But I tell you what, man. I could probably execute a full Ironman with a walk run right now.
Ooh.
I'm
down straight confidence in November.
Right. But I'm talking about like a 16 and a half hour Ironman.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, something that's still finishing. No. But it wouldn't be a finish according to your standards, but you could complete it.
Right. But when you hear or when you do yoga and you start to realize how, really out of shape you're not out of shape, or just how unbalanced your muscle structure can be.
Yep.
And wow. Thank God for the it was only an hour, and it's not like the hardest class, but it's not the easiest either. But it's sort of one of those flow jobs where you're up and down and in and out of downward dog and plank.
It was a flow job?
Flow job.
Hey man, there is nothing wrong with starting your Monday off with a flow job.
I gotta tell you, I think you're onto something there.
I needed that. I needed that laugh this morning.
I know. We need more laughter. I was thinking about that too, man. So, that's kind of, and that was the thing is like, I got up and I forced myself to get going because I've been really struggling with that morning pattern, as you know, as always. But
as always,
I did some good stuff before bed last night. Calming, meditational type stuff, and I think I had a decent sleep. But anyway, the point being is before yoga, I started thinking about, a lot of times I'll get to my computer and I'll start, you go there and you just sort of, look for something. Mm-hmm. And, maybe, I know a lot of people sort of have their lists where they go to the read in the morning, and they'll read the Wall Street Journal, and they'll read the whatever. And it just dawned on me this morning that I don't have anything to read anymore. I just don't know where to go, and a lot of this stems from how we were feeling yesterday on our when we were texting back and forth about the University of Tennessee football search and you're a big Tennessee fan, always have been for life, Vol for life.
Can I just say something?
Yes, you can.
If you were one of the people who did your little media mob backlash yesterday as a Tennessee Volunteer fan, you are a spineless, hypocritical coward.
Whoa. Taking a stance.
I feel horrible for the guy. I really do. I hope he gets a job back at Ohio State, and until further notice, I am no longer a University of Tennessee football fan.
Oh.
I couldn't be any more disappointed in their fan base. I mean, the ridiculous hypocrisy of the whole thing and what they'd said about this guy who is untrue. It's totally untrue. They went their own direction and created their own narrative to fit what they wanted, which was just not Greg Schiano. Because, the quote unquote fans know what's best for the university with their, they want either John Gruden or T. Martin. And it's just totally disappointing. And you know what? Who I'm the most disappointed of now is the athletic director.
Yeah,
if you don't have the courage but if you don't have the balls to stand behind your decision and you let social media determine your outcome, then you're in no business. You have no business being in a place of leadership. Period. So go get another job somewhere else. It's going to be. I feel terrible for the guy. I hope he gets I hope he is able to return back to Ohio State to stay there in his job. I feel terrible for the guy, and I will be for the remainder of the season until further notice. I will remain a Tennessee basketball fan and support Rick Barnes and their basketball team. But until further notice, I will join my wife in being an Ohio State fan until further notice.
Hey, come on, man! Perfect opportunity if you.
I'm not going to be. I don't root against Wisconsin. You know this. Love their program. And Allie does too. But if I'm not going to lie, if Schiano's on the sidelines this weekend, I'm gonna root for him.
All right.
I feel bad for the guy. I mean, it's him and his family and his reputation tarnished because of
an assumption.
No, more than that, yeah. It's just anyway. But moving on.
Well, moving on. But you say that about the AD, and someone said somewhere. I remember hearing, if you start making your decisions based on your fan base, soon you're going to be sitting with them at the games. And yeah, that's just a weak, overreactive move. I mean, because now I could almost see, like, even in a day or two where people are going to be like, well, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. And then all of a sudden, the AD's already pulled the offer from the table, and now who knows what kind of buyout there's going to be involved. I don't know. It's just a really messy. And I feel bad for that dude, too, because it's just like, I just can't stand people that overreact to that degree and just pile on, group mob mentality. It becomes I don't know. It was rather deflating, and I even told you last night that I kind of like that whole thing. It's been a trend for me, sort of this like kind of questioning myself as to why I go to such levels and get so vested into the outcome of certain college athletic teams or whatever. A long time ago, I pretty much dropped my association with professional sports. Like my I can still on the outskirts call myself a Brewers fan or whatever, but other than that, like the NFL and NBA and that sort of thing, I kind of enjoy. I don't like the NFL, but I sort of enjoy watching baseball for the sake of baseball and the competition. And it reminded me back when I grew up, when all my, the Badgers were terrible at everything. And it gave me more of a wide ranging sort of just enjoyment, a factor, or appreciation for the game in general. And I just didn't really get tied. My moods and my reactions weren't tied to outcomes of games other than, wow, that was a hell of a play, or what a game, or something like that, And now you get into this, thing about, the outpouring yesterday just was like, it's just so kind of gross, and I'm not, and it could be any university USA. It doesn't have to be Tennessee, because I could see this sort of thing happening anywhere now because of the social media, I don't know, spineless sort of reach. I don't know.
It sets a very dangerous precedent.
Well, the whole thing's getting out of control. Well, people are just like. That's why, we come in here and I think we try to really be positive and sort of for lack of a better word, be sort of satisfied or not content, but sort of okay with average, just being normal, not being extraordinary.
Being normal, yeah.
Yeah, I know average is going to have a negative term, but most people are average, really, if you think about it. It's like we can sit here and say, we have dreams, you deserve to, have everything in life. And then people sort of fall into that trap of I deserve to have everything. I can do that. I can be whatever. No, you can't. Probably most people don't have like but you can be happy and content with like normalcy, like simple everyday things in life. You don't have to be Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. I mean, the odds of that are pretty slim.
Or would you even want to be?
Right.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't, but yeah.
I read a cool little I kind of start digging around and and find some cool stuff last night. There was this that I don't know if you've heard of the story of when the Beatles got started, and they're about 3 days from recording their first record, and they're just on this cusp of blowing up. They fired their drummer. Pete Best was his name.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought in Ringo Starr, of course, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly why they fired him. In some reports say that like the band really, he was a good-looking dude, and people were kind of jealous of him, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And but they brought in Ringo. But the point of all this is that the Beatles blew up and they became the biggest band ever in history, and it happened really fast. So
right.
what does this Pete Best guy think? Well, he went through hell, as you can imagine, initially. And, he went through these bouts with, alcoholism and depression and suicidal attempts and things like that. But in the end, he wasn't interviewed recently, but the interview was like maybe 10, 15 years ago or something like that. Mm-hmm. He said it was the best thing that ever happened to him when he stepped back and hit, the path that defined his meeting his wife and having his kids and not being, this like bigger than life caricature and like living this whole. I mean, it's easy to sit back and say, "Wow, it'd been awesome to be in the Beatles," but I mean, I don't know. There's something to be said for just not. Always striving to be like, and to me it relates in the sense it's like I deserve to be like on the podium or what, you know what I mean? You start getting that kind of thought in your head, and it becomes a pressure, or it becomes sort of like a nagging. It becomes the first thing that you think about. It's
and a lot of it is that it's that, and so many people do this. It's you force something.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about forcing. I'm forcing myself to do this today, or I'm going to do this. It's not an offensive mentality, but it's almost like a blunt force mentality. And like one of the very like biggest lessons I learned when I started getting sober was this guy said, "Hey, listen, you've been the CEO of your life for a long time, and look where it got you."
Mm-hmm.
You've been making all the decisions. You've been trying to be number one. It's time for you to give it over to a God or a higher power. And the next time you want to go do something and you're just determined to do it, do the opposite. Because the more you have your hands on something and try to force it, the more you are likely to just totally F it up. And not to take that to an extreme with like training and triathlon, but like you see that so often in training. And you saw it with like the Tennessee thing. It's like you all think you know what's better, so you're going to basically blunt force this guy's job out of what he's doing because you think you know better.
Right.
And the likelihood now is that you're going to get a shitty coach with no experience and you're going to suck. And you know what? You reap what you sow. And it's so much like in training when like you have people who just like bluntly force things when the reality is, and I read this it was a great quote I think from Luke Bell, and he said 95% of becoming great is not getting sick, not getting injured, and being consistent. And if you can just manage those three things, then the likelihood of you reaching your full potential is much higher than if you did anything else. But usually if you force things, then what happens? You get sick, you get injured, and you miss workouts. Instead of just going with the flow and not trying to, quote unquote, make your best, because the best decision for today is usually the easier, softer, shorter route. It is rarely ever I'm just going to absolutely force myself. Like, I have athletes too that like, it's like 8 o'clock on a Saturday night and I'm just toast, but I think I'm going to go to the gym. Don't go. That's that blunt force, because you're going to wake up the next day and be trash. There's just a time when you just need to kind of let yourself, let almost like your body be in control in a way, and get your mind out of it. In that your body's your life circumstances, work, relationships, whatever, is basically telling you, you need a break. But what happens most is that, people are so scared of breaks because they're scared they're not going to get back into consistency. And that's why, a week like Thanksgiving was so difficult for so many athletes that I had, because they had been on these gigantic, huge consistency, killing weeks, and then taking days off and getting out of a routine is scary. Because it's like going back into the unknown that they used to be comfortable with, and now I'm ready to get back to work, instead of the how it used to be. And it's just like the more you force, trying to fit a square into a square peg in a round hole, like something like that, it's usually going to end up bad. And that's where you have to be able to go with the flow, and not to where you don't have discipline, but to understand the difference between discipline and present circumstance and what the reality is. And oftentimes that's where things get confusing, is we give ourselves a pat on the back for being disciplined, when the reality is the most disciplined thing you could do is probably to take a day off, or not make the decision, or shoot your coach or your buddy or training partner a text and say, hey, I'm not feeling really, really good today, but I want to stay consistent. What do you think? And any right-minded person would say, you know what? Yeah, take the day off.
Right.
Because fending off sickness or, an injury, is the number one goal. So yeah, it's difficult.
Well, what kind of things can you do? I mean, if you're feeling that way, I mean, I guess if you're worried about getting sick, and then you start getting a rut of two or excuse me, whoa,
man.
Speaking of getting sick, right? So no, there's like a 2 or 4 day kind of rut, and you're not feeling it, but there's other things you can do. I mean, little things, right? I mean, I suppose that's when you start thinking about going for walks and things like that, or just doing whatever. But I can already tell, honestly, the way I've felt, I've been kind of forcing it, but I've just been trying to be consistent. But I can already tell, if I do the next month and I go do yoga, 3, 4, or 5 days a week or whatever, I know that's going to be 100% better for me than just plowing through runs and bike workouts and stuff like that. If I kind of keep a little bit if I run, I'm not running an hour, I might just be running 20, 30 minutes in between with this yoga and just balancing my body. I can tell, because my body has just been stiff and kind of weak, and I can feel like my core isn't satisfying my range of motions, and I just don't feel strong in a lot of different balance regards. So yeah, I think just to, you just talked about, I think maybe Chuck might be a good example, actually, because this was his third Ironman yesterday in Cozumel. And he came out of, was Chattanooga the last one? Yeah, Chattanooga was his last one.
Yeah, he did Chattanooga, yeah.
And, which he put a lot of mileage on, training for 2 Ironman and then a third. And you guys made a decision, at least about the running, you were talking about a little bit yesterday.
Yeah. Before I go into that, I did want to say, back to your, getting in a rut thing, is that, to a point when you're just trying to do something, it's that old adage of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Whether it's a 30-minute dog walk or a 10-minute run that usually turns into more, or just going to the pool and doing a 200, that usually spurs on more activity. Only, and for the main reason, because you're already committed to doing something, your body's just going to figure out what and when and how. It's all going to click, and then you're going to go. but by just faking it, quote unquote, faking it till you make it, you're already in the groove of the hardest part, which is getting out the door,
right,
and tying your shoes. It's just, it might not be as long or as hard or as structured as you might think it should be, but the hardest part is always going to the gym, getting in the pool, getting on your trainer, doing whatever. And like I said, regardless if it's 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, unstructured, structured, whatever it is, you're already committed to the hardest part. Your mind or your body, or they'll sync at the same time, and then it'll tell you, okay, now it's time to ramp it up with some more structure.
You've made the transition.
Exactly, you made the transition. But again, if you can just stick with the hardest part and fake it till you make it, you'll eventually get there. But no, going back to what you were saying is there's an athlete that I just recently started working with here the last 8 weeks, Chuck Knuth, who he has a real crazy job. He works in a steel mill, and he'll work 4 days on, 4 days off, and then work 4 nights or something, and then 4 days off. So he's a real crazy schedule. So it's definitely nothing that you can just lay out like a 7-day a week schedule and expect things to work, and you gotta be really delicate with when the hard days are, and then you can't, crush him for all 4 days he has off, because he's got to go back to work and work 4 days, and that's enough fatigue. So you have to be really delicate. But he had done Ironman Boulder, which was I think June, and done okay, and then he did Ironman Chattanooga, which was September. And he and I started working together after Chattanooga, with just, like I said, 8 weeks to go until Ironman Cozumel. And generally speaking, if you do 3 Ironman in a year, it's just like, first of all, I think it's too many, but, he had already planned on doing those before we started working together. So I didn't really have much input, but usually what you'll find is that, those second and third Ironman are usually either about the same time or worse, because there's just so much there's only so much your body can handle before it needs a break. And so when we started working together, I looked back through his training, and he'd already done 2. So I knew one thing already: the base mileage was already there. Like he had the foundation, he had the work, and traditional wisdom is, all right, let's just keep it. Let's keep up, or at least from most things that I know about other athletes and coaches, let's keep going along, and let's keep, with the fitness, and we'll do we'll stay in the zone 1 and zone 2. But what I saw and what I see in a lot of athletes is that failure to understand when your body has kind of reached, like, there's only so long you want to stay in that chassis phase. Before you just start blatantly ignoring the engine. And he had been blatantly ignoring the engine, and had just been basically built, like, to an extent, he had built up like a semi tractor trailer's version of a chassis, and was only driving around with a Miata's engine. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, like, but it's Ironman, it's going long, we got to keep things zone 1, zone 2. And what I saw was, all right, let's see if we can, we don't want to trim the chassis down, but if we can use these last 8, because here's the biggest thing, and the big mistake people make during the, quote unquote off season, or during the portion of the season, is they try to position going fast and going far into totally different cycles, and they separate them. And what happens is you either go fast and you create a really, really big engine with a not sturdy enough chassis, which you may get injured. That's Endurance Nation's biggest thing. Well, let's do the fast and then we'll go far. And then you have people who call this BS garbage, like reverse periodization, where you don't go from base to fast, base training to fast, or you go from fast to longer. And the reality is, you just have to understand and be aware of where people's bodies are, and look at the numbers and the data and what they're telling you, and say, all right, I think you've reached maximum capacity on the chassis. So you can't trim the chassis down, but if I can get your semi 18 wheeler to turn into more of like a F250 with an appropriate size engine, well, now we can go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to be powerful and durable and resilient with an engine that equates it. And when we started working together, his biggest complaint was that he just never ran well. Even though he had done all these long workouts, I was putting all this mileage, and he said, I don't feel like I've ever run to my potential. And so when we started working together, I said, listen, man, I'm I know it's going to be totally different from what you've been doing, but we're going to go really, really, really short. And you have a major blunt sword. So we're just going to keep things short and try and sharpen it as much as we can in this short 7-week span before you taper, and do all speed and all short stuff. So he had one like 13-mile run, but everything else was below 10. We did lots of speed stuff. Same thing on the bike. I mean, he had the endurance. We knew the chassis was there. It's not going to disappear. Mm-hmm. Because you can do certain workouts with intensity that'll maintain that endurance stress level that you need, but can also maximize the engine instead of just obsessing over this slow ass chassis. And he ended up having an absolutely fantastic race. We had a little, and kudos to him, he stuck to the plan. And he texted me on Friday. He had his bike shipped there by Tri-Bike Transport. He did Ironman Cozumel. So anytime you have to ship your bike and it's an out of country race, that's called always tend to add stress. There's just a lot more logistics to take care of, and you got to ship your bike. And anyway, he put his bike back together, and his power meter wasn't working. So we had to scrap that, and then I had to give him some heart rate zone, heart rate kind of a ceiling, and then an average range. So I'll give him like average between 135 and 140 with a 145 ceiling after about 15 to 20 miles. Because those first 15 to 20 miles, your heart rate's going to be up anyway, just because you're going to have a little bit of cardiac drift upwards from the swim. So it's going to take a little bit of time to even out and kind of dissipate. And he ended up averaging like 139. So he stayed in that 135 to 140 range. And then our biggest thing was, let's just execute the run. And so I gave him I didn't give him any pace or any heart rate zones to keep. I just gave him some more of a scale of 1 to 10, RP scale of where I needed him to start, and just make sure he gave himself enough buffer and just to be what it is. And he dominated it. He PR'd his fastest Ironman time by about an hour, crushed his Ironman marathon PR, and it was good. It was good. I woke up this morning and he sent me a text and he said, "I'm literally floating right now. I'm so happy. I finally feel like I raised to my potential." And that is obviously a great thing to wake up to on a Monday morning, but it's a great thing to just get from an athlete in general, because as a coach, that's like one of the most rewarding things, is to like help an athlete not always get out of their own way, but sometimes to do just that, and to allow them the opportunity to finally reach what they've always thought. They've just gone about it the right way, or they've hit too many dead spots. And coaching it's incredibly rewarding. It is incredibly fulfilling, and it is also incredibly stressful. I'm very, I'm a very even keel guy for the most part. I invest a lot in my athletes from, a coaching standpoint, but, and from a friendship and relationship standpoint. And it's like, you have your own dreams as your own athlete as a coach, but then every athlete that you carry around their dreams and their desires. And then you have to see what you believe they're capable of, if you can just kind of get them out of their own way. And then just to kind of see them reach that, potential, knowing that, you kind of went out on a limb or against the grain or whatever. And you know, cooked up a good recipe and it tasted good this time, and then and then it's like, all right, well, now you got to do it again. It's like, but yeah, it's incredibly, stressful, but I love it. And to see, that kind of, to get that kind of result from him, and was awesome. We had another athlete, Stephen Edwards, who competed in Australia this weekend. He had an outstanding race in like 100 degree heat. Yeah, just brutal. But he did fantastic, and just had a killer swim and run. And it's but it for Chuck, in the context of this discussion, as far as blunt force, it's like everybody always wants more, and while consistency and volume is important, to a point you have to know where, more is just taking more steps back, or just concreting your current form longer. Instead of switching from, like a person switching from a short course to long course, or long course to short course. There's just, the longer you stay in one, sometimes it makes a difference on how fast you're able to translate it. That's usually from long course to short course. But yeah, for him it was let's peel the layers back, instead of just piling them on.
Back to this idea of building your chassis and your engine together.
Yeah.
Obviously, you said he was way up there in the chassis, so you kind of had to swing it back the other way a little bit and sharpen the sword and build the engine and the speed element of it. But in general, you mentioned that some other people have philosophies of going with big, quote unquote chassis blocks, and then switching over to the engine and going back and forth. Do you, like, in general, do you feel, because my first thought on that was like basically what I was talking about with yoga. I feel like my body has just gotten out of balance based on what I've been doing. So I assume that you're talking about, kind of keeping an eye on both as you go, and sort of just keeping that without those peaks and valleys of, my chassis is in great shape. Now I got to get my engine up there and whatever. Like, so you kind of keep an eye on that over the course of the whole, season.
You need to keep an eye on it really in long term and short term. It's fairly easy to see if you know what to look for within an athlete, and as far as pace and terrain, and a lot of times a lot of it can be shown, for at least in my opinion, with the way that I prescribe things, and when I look at a lot of it can be found in strength, because strength is the for me, and what I look for is the happy medium. Because strength work, hill work, and how you can perform, and that's why I'm such a huge fan of hill work in general, because you can work both. You can work the chassis by doing strength work, running up a hill. It's resistance training for running. It is strength work, but you're also going very anaerobic and working that other system. So you can do both. And and the biggest risk people take in general when they try to prime the engine is that they think the only way to prime the engine is to like bang out mile repeats or bang out this and that, and they ended up getting hurt because you're jumping too far ahead of. You're trying to go from like a Miata engine. Like, you may have a Miata engine, and you're like, okay, well, in order for me to get my Miata engine to a Corvette, I need to do a mile repeat at my desired Corvette engine pace. What they really need to do is go with like their whatever Infinity engine, so they don't overdo it. But strength for me, and I can see this when I give people strength workouts, is that like if they if I give somebody a strength workout in the hills and I look at their elevation and they say, yeah, I really, and athletes will tell you this, and you give yourself the own answers when you end with the workout, because usually somebody will say, I had the legs, I didn't have the lungs. Or I had the lungs, I didn't have the legs. So you're immediately you're taking the context of what they're telling you, and then you're overlapping it with what you see in the data, and you're thinking, okay, you had the legs because you were able to complete these, but you didn't have the lungs. Okay, so I know you've got the strength and durability, so maybe it's time for us to maybe prime the engine a little bit more and catch up the lungs and your cardiovascular anaerobic capacity with your strength. Or I was cranking up these hills, and I got to the repetition 2 of 5, and I had the lungs and I was feeling great, but my legs had no pop and I couldn't make it. Okay, well, now we're looking at some durability issues. So now we need to scale it back. As far as the anaerobic stuff, or maybe we need to just scale back the repetitions. And so you have to always look at it on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. But a lot of times what gets hidden in all of this is the benefits of running slow to get fast. And it's proven. We talk about it all the time. I have a great blog post about it with all the numbers and data. All my athletes would basically agree, and even in the short term, that are busting out like a gazillion Thanksgiving Day PRs in a 5K, to a point. Then you get, all right, well, now we've got an engine we really, really like. Now we just got to make the incremental gains to get better. But what happens is you fall in love with your current engine, and you just either A, stick with it, or you want to go out and drag race it every other effing weekend. And that's where you fall back into this complacency of achievement. And that's how you underachieve, because you forget what got you to this point. And then you just become kind of enamored with this newfound, superpower of running, and you're just like on cloud nine. And I can see this in athletes, and they'll hit a PR, and then the very next workout they try to match it. And I'm like, slow the F down. Like you hit it the other day. Let's not. And guess what? Hello, ding ding ding, reminder. You hit that by not forcing the previous 100 workouts. So don't force the next one. Let them come. Yeah. That was one of the biggest things that I always noticed when I worked for Iron Tribe Fitness, was that we'd have two different kinds of athletes that would literally come in like during an open gym, and they would literally try to PR their squat clean or their deadlift every single day. So they're just trying to prove they still have what they have. Like for all of a sudden you're just going to lose it after a week. And so they're going out, but then you have these athletes that would literally just go into a workout and then all of a sudden step off the box and say, holy shit, I just did my first pull up, without even knowing it, or not knowing it, without even planning to do it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's like they're doing they're doing these reps of like 5 times 4 of like a squat clean, and then all of a sudden they did it, and I'm like, oh my god, I just did my 1 rep max 4 times, but they didn't plan it, but then the next day and then the next week they're like, all right, here we go again, I'm gonna hit that 240 again. I'm like, why? You didn't just lose it. Remember how you got it. And that's one. It's one of the hardest things, but that's one of the biggest, benefits that having a training partner or a coach or whatever it is to look at and think, yeah, I see, because we all have those buts, and we all do. Where it's after race, before race, like, yeah, but I'm there, I'm this, and it's like, yeah, but like, you did X, Y, and Z to get this. Why are you trying to all of a sudden stay at Z? Why not go back to A? And be okay with it? Like, I posted this morning in our closed active athlete Facebook group for the athletes that we coach. And I remember, I think a while back, I said I was going to go through a big swim focus, and my goal was to hit a 105 off the wall 100.
Mm-hmm.
I met it this morning.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Congratulations. I bet you can't do it tomorrow.
Well, you know what? Here's the funny thing: is A, I'm not going to try. B, I know what the work I put in, and then it's working. And so I'm going to keep doing it, and I have then, the next time I do one in 2 months or so, I'm hoping it's down closer to a minute or maybe even under. But that was the first all out, trying to go for time 100 I've done, in the last 60 days. And so, it's but I'm not going to just all of a sudden go out tomorrow and expect to do that again or even want to. And so it's just about remembering how you got there, and A, not being complacent, or B, not trying to PR the day and force it back again to the beginning of the conversation, force it every day. And remember how you got there and why you got there and where you want to go.
It's unbelievable, because I think that may be. You've coached so many athletes over the time. To me, that seems like it could easily be one of the biggest mistakes and problems that athletes have. It's so human nature to want to go out and kind of remind yourself and replicate yourself that you still have it, or you still got that, or whatever. But at what point, I don't know. You say you hit a 105 and you want to push that to 1. I mean, at some point, there's something you just can't go any higher. I would imagine, right? Because if you keep going,
I don't know.
Well, I'm not saying put limits on it, but I guess at some point, if you could, just move that needle to 1, and then all of a sudden that 105 becomes easier. You can do that for 300 or whatever.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing,
right?
And that's the whole thing, and that's why you have to love. Listen, I love the phrase. It's all about the process. But you know what? The process also has freaking results. And if you don't see results along the way, then you lose sight of your commitment and why you committed to the process, because in order to be a part of it, you're going to want freaking results.
I guess that's my point, is instead of always looking at that high end, that, I want to get down to a 4:30 mile or whatever. But if you could get down to a 6-minute mile and hold that for, you know what I mean? Focus a little bit more on especially in our sport, the endurance aspect of speed.
Yeah. But I see what you're saying. But for me, the fastest 100 I think I swam before today during this training cycle was a 1:13, because I was doing repetitions. But what I figured out for me, at least right now, is I know that, and this might not always be true. So what I found out right now is that this short course, the 25s and the 50s and the 100s, this last swim block has really worked for me to get this fast.
Right.
That might not always work for me. The next time I may do it, I may be a 103. Okay, well, am I doing something wrong? Well, no. But can I try maybe doing more steady paced endurance sets and longer, and see how that adapts? But the whole thing for me was, when I got done and looked up at the clock and it said 105, it wasn't so much that it was 105, it was that, hell yeah, it's working. Regardless of even if it was a 106, and or 3 or 104 or 103, I wasn't going to stop. It's okay, what I'm doing is working.
Right.
The workouts are working. The consistency is working, because the lower it drops, I'm still going to become faster. Same thing with running, and so the athletes that I monitor the most during a course of a week are the ones that just hit a PR, because they're in the most danger. of trying to go out the next day and do it again.
Yeah.
And literally, and I can see this. If an athlete maintains the exact damn pace every single day of the week, they're forcing it. Because you're not the same every day. So you're either not going by feel, or you're staring at your watch because you hit, 7-minute miles this one day on a training run. So the next 4 days, all of your runs have been 7 minutes, 701, 704. Something smells.
Yeah.
And it's because you're forcing it. You're not letting it happen like you just let it happen. And it's like going out and having this incredible experience you could never have imagined and never planned. And now you want it to happen again so bad, you step back and take a pen and pad out and try to write down every step of the day that occurred to make that thing happen, and then try to go back out and replicate it the next day. It's not going to happen.
A lot of variables.
A lot of variables, and you're forcing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so much about training and racing is not forcing it and just being, I know it's annoying, but being in the moment and staying present and knowing where you are all the time and being okay with where you are. Because just like the day you were okay being where you were when you just shattered your 5K, Summers Gandridge, this morning, be where you are tomorrow too, when it might be slower. And realize that you had just as many of those slow days leading up to that as you will afterwards. And that's how you stay consistent and you stay healthy and you stay injury-free.
So we've talked about running slow to get fast. We have a whole podcast on that. It occurred to me while you're talking about your swimming. Do you swim slow to get fast?
Yeah. I generally cruise at like 120 to 130.
Mm-hmm.
And then to an all-out sprint 105, it's a pretty big difference.
But is the same principle hold true, you think?
For sure. Okay. Unless you prescribed this ridiculous USRPT, like this ultra race pace simulation crap that some people do. I'm not a huge fan of it. But, yeah, I do. It's a very much like everything else in sport. So.
Mm-hmm. So, cycling as well. Because isn't that the thing, right? It's like most people either they don't go slow enough and they don't go fast enough. Isn't that kind of the general rule of training mistake?
Yep, because they're biggest training mistakes are your slow days aren't slow enough and your fast days aren't fast enough. Your slow days aren't slow enough because you're too obsessed with going fast, and your hard days cannot be hard enough because you're so fatigued from going too hard on your slow days. And that is also why people end up racing out of their mind when they've been chilling out and running slow, is because they have a whole tank to run with.
So that's a good thing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're not beating themselves up every single day trying to PR, and so, yeah, it's a very good thing.
Oh, that damn PR, man.
Mm-hmm. Gets you every time.
It just sucks you in.
Sucks you in. Oof, I'm down to 1% on the old battery over here.
All right. Well, I think we got a good coverage here.
We do. Podcast, what, 111?
No, it's like 114 or 15.
114, the flow job.
The flow job.
That's a Seinfeld episode if I ever heard of one.
You might be right, buddy.
I know, man. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Again, we have new hats and visors for sale. So if you want to if you want to check out anything and everything that we do, whether it's our training camps, swim analysis, coaching, the gear, the podcast, our blog, check us out on our new website, and please subscribe to our awesome newsletter that's starting in December at crushingiron.com, and get on that, and we will hit you up with awesome additional info. Yeah. You
just about covered everything there.
I did that, trying to hold up my end of the bargain.
I think. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know if you mentioned the the closed Facebook group.
I did not.
Search Crushing Iron Group on Facebook. Send us a request. We'll let you in there. There's hundreds of positive, good conversation. It's not like a Twitter pylon by any means. We have good conversation and people that respect the space and know that you're trying to get better and want to help, and we'll do whatever it takes to get you there. And you can search that Crushing Iron Group on Facebook. Other than that, if you're looking for a coach for the season, look at our coaching tab on crushingiron.com. And we've got camps coming up next year. We got the whole 9 yards. So check it out. Stay positive. Don't force a square peg in a round hole.
Amen.
All right, buddy. I will catch you later.
Sounds good, man.
See ya.
See ya.